Here's 5 Reasons.
Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome to a very special episode of 5 Reasons. I'm Joe, and this is the episode of 5 Reasons that 5 Reasons can't contain, so it's actually going to be 10 reasons. And the reason for that is because this episode required a special trip, a trip that I'm taking right now. I'm on the road with my buddy Eric Ryder of Game vs. Game.
Hello.
On the road to suburban Chicago, Illinois, to the Galloping Ghost Arcade in Brookfield, Illinois, which is the, I believe, second biggest arcade in the United States after the Fun Spot in Weir's Beach, New Hampshire. It's you pay one time when you get in the door. All the games are on free play. It's a total blast. My bachelor party was there. I love it, and I'm sorry, Roger, that I left you at home and you didn't get to come with us. But I'm hosting this episode of 5 Reasons for just that purpose. And Eric, you've never been to the Galloping Ghost, if
Nope,
I'm not mistaken.
Not ever been there. And another first for me, this is Midwest Gaming Classic weekend.
That's right.
2018.
Yeah.
Bigger, they've moved it, bigger than it's ever been.
Yep.
So a lot of firsts this weekend. Heading to Chicago, first time actually being in the city.
Really?
Lots of firsts this week.
Wow, okay. Yeah, well, Chicago is right next to Milwaukee, my old stomping ground, so I used to come down here for punk shows and to go to the Galloping Ghost Arcade when I lived here pretty frequently. So I'm very excited. We're going to take a look at 10 arcade games that you can't play anywhere else except your local arcade, hopefully your local arcade. So let's go ahead and do that.
Normally, this is where we'd talk history, but
arcades have roots as far back as the late 19th century, which is a lot to cover in such a short format.
so let's nutshell it.
Radio. Early arcades were filled with novelties like peep show kinetoscopes and electromechanical games.
Then pinball came in the 1930s, which I guess is also an electromechanical game, but you get what I'm saying.
Despite problems in cities like New York, pinball continued to be popular for much of the 20th century, and electromechanical games would get more ambitious thanks to folks like Sega and others.
In the early 70s, Nolan Bushnell made Computer Space, the first arcade video game, while working at Nutting Associates. Shortly thereafter, he started Atari, and with Pong, launched the first arcade video game boom.
With Chuck E. Cheese, Bushnell also made arcades palatable to families, changing the bad reputation that they'd had for such a long time as hangouts for riffraff and ne'er-do-wells.
While arcades dipped during the mid-80s following the American home market crash, they did continue to be successful, and a second arcade boom came about in the early 90s, thanks to Street Fighter II, Mortal Kombat, and more.
In the early 2000s, home systems had pretty well caught up with arcades, and attendance began to slump, with more robust experiences available at home. Arcades, for the most part, began to disappear from the landscape, save for places like Dave & Buster's.
Recently, through a combination of nostalgia and I guess people just wanting to get out of the house, arcades have been making a comeback. Barcades have popped up in both of our hometowns, and the arcade we're visiting, the Galloping Ghost, has become a hotspot for game players of all ages in recent years.
So with that brief history lesson out of the way, let's get to this.
Here's 10 reasons to visit your local arcade.
Beat 'em ups.
I figured we'd start with one because this list is full of them. And why not start with the weirdest one? Ninja Baseball Batman was developed by IREM based on a concept by Drew Maniscalco of IREM's US office. Drew was inspired by the Ninja Turtles phenomenon of the late 80s and early 90s, and, well, baseball and Batman. Kinda writes itself. The game has a completely bonkers art style, featuring robots named after famous baseball players beating up other baseball items, as well as anthropomorphic airplanes and more. Gameplay-wise, it's a pretty rote belt-scroller, but the aesthetics are so weird that it is 100% worth checking out, especially if you have friends. Speaking of games that are fun with friends,
And a heap of nostalgia for good measure. G.I. Joe is a rail shooter from Konami for up to 4 players, a la 1994's Wild Guns. Pick from Roadblock, Scarlet, Duke, or Snake Eyes and charge headlong into Cobra's base to thwart Cobra Commander's latest bid for global dominance. Thankfully, you're not carrying those cartoon lasers with you. In fact, you've got unlimited ammo and some screen-clearing missiles at your disposal to take out throngs of Viper soldiers and vehicles from the show, with familiar Cobra officers like the Baroness and Destro acting as stage bosses. G.I. Joe is an over-the-top licensed shooter feast, and more importantly, a really good time worth checking out. What is this? Is this that Laserdisc game based on that Lupin anime movie?
No, that's a different Cliffhanger arcade game. This one is a set-piece-laden outing from Data East. It seems like they were really trying to demonstrate just how powerful their arcade hardware was when compared to consoles of the time. Because this game uses tons of scaling and rotation, lots of bad guys on screen at a time, and just about every hardware trick in the book. It's Indiana Jones by way of 80s anime, and I absolutely love it. Are all of your games Konami games?
Nope, but this one is. Metamorphic Forest is a side-scrolling beat-em-up from Konami, releasing in 1993. Any game where your character is a were-panther is okay by me. All the characters here are ancient guardians and have been resurrected by the goddess Athena to do battle with the evil Death Shadow. They're gifted with the power to transform into a beast form, and that's really where this game shines. It's a fun beat-em-up with an absolutely fantastic aesthetic featuring all manner of the unusual, from anthropomorphic lizards and, I don't know, hedgehog/wolf mixes, and of course the player transformations like the aforementioned were-panther. There's also a stellar were-bear and the ever-classic werewolf and minotaur. Thank you, 1990s. Are all of your games Data East games?
Nope, but this one is, and it rules. It's actually pretty similar to Ninja Baseball Batman in that the set dressing does the most to make this game worth playing, but it does have a deeper combat system than that game, including some cool team-up attacks. Plus, it has rad set pieces like chasing this spectral carriage. Oh, and it's the only non-wrestling game that I can think of that lets you DDT Frankenstein's monster. Whips might be cool, but DDTs are cooler. Yeah, buddy, let's keep that horror train rolling. But wait, this is a Neo Geo game. Didn't they all get home ports?
Most of them, but not all. Nightmare in the Dark is an unusual little platform puzzler, which are two of my favorite words mashed up into a brilliant subgenre with a great dark aesthetic. You're a gravedigger, tasked with clearing each screen of all the ghoulish grave robbers, much like Bubble Bobble. However, you turn a single enemy into a fireball and hurl him down towards all the others, much more reminiscent of Snow Brothers. Clearing the screen with one fireball gets you the bigger rewards, of course, and you move on to face tougher enemies and bosses along the way. Nightmare is a fun and quirky title that any arcade goer should keep an eye out for. You had to get a wrestling game in here, didn't you?
Woo, woo, woo. You know it. That's a wrestling reference.
I'll see myself out.
Ring of Destruction Slam Masters 2, known in Japan as Super Muscle Bomber, the International Blowout, is the sequel to Saturday Night Slam Masters, but unfortunately, unlike the first game in the series, it never got a console port, which is a shame because it would have been right at home on the Saturn. At any rate, this game changes things a bit. First, it removes the ability to move up and down the ring like a beat-em-up. This is a pure 2D fighting game. It also removes tag matches and pinning. In a lot of ways, it's not really a wrestling game at all, but it retains a grapple button, ring ropes, and the ability to Irish whip your opponent. I honestly don't like it quite as much as the original game, or Muscle Bomber Duo, the Street Fighter II Turbo-esque update to the first Slam Masters, but I still dig it quite a bit, especially since I can't really think of another game quite like it. Pac-Man and Mario together at last, racing go-karts against each other.
I mean, how could this not be on this list? Mario Kart Arcade GP is the first of now 4 Mario Kart Arcade exclusive titles developed by Namco, hence the inclusion of Pac-Man, Miss Pac-Man, and Blinky, and released in 2005. There's 6 tracks, and each race is given a random selection of 3 items to pick up and use throughout. As you progress, you're also given challenge levels and can unlock new usable items along the way, which the cabinet could record on a card to be inserted back in or into another machine to maintain your progress and records. This is a single-player machine, but more can be linked in for a multiplayer experience with a built-in camera taking your picture and displaying it above your racer. Pretty neat! It's Mario Kart with a different feel, and most definitely something worth checking out. Another beat 'em up, Joe?
Another totally awesome beat 'em up, and another game I would very much like to have appeared on the Saturn. But no, instead we got that Golden Axe fighting game that no one really liked. Though Sega's recent announcement of a new Sega Ages line for the Switch has given me hope, since it will include arcade games. That hope is probably misplaced. Anyways, this is the sequel to Golden Axe, but it's completely different than the two Genesis sequels. This one sees the original Death Adder return, and challenging him are a guy who looks like Axe Battler from the first game but isn't, Gilius Thunderhead from the first game but now riding a giant, a dude named Trix who fights with a pitchfork, and a female centaur who becomes a regular lady when she rides beasts. And speaking of, this game really improves on the beasts of the first game. Forget little dragons and tail-whipping things with chicken beaks. This game has scorpions that shoot lightning, and giant praying mantises. The magic is still here, there are team-up moves, the environments are well designed with branching pathways. It's seriously criminal that this game is not available on any home system. If you're a fan of brawlers, don't sleep on this one. This game rules.
Yeah, it does. We've all played light gun games. We've all played driving games. But have you ever played a light gun driving game? If you're ever lucky enough to spot Lucky and Wild out in the wild, then sit down and hang on tight. Lucky and Wild is a 1 or 2 player game from Namco with the unique twist that player 1 controls the car along with holding a light gun. Player 2 just gets a light gun and they're along for the ride. Clearly inspired by buddy cop duos like Tango and Cash or Starsky and Hutch, but unfortunately not Turner and Hooch. It's all the outrageous car chase sequences boiled down into 6 city-crashing, blockade-destroying, adrenaline-fueled levels to stop and apprehend your target suspect. Completing each level will take you to the Pink Cat Garage to repair your car and maybe get some attention from the ladies, complete with cheeky raised eyebrows. Lucky and Wild's unique approach to driving and light gun games alone is enough to make it a high priority for any arcade goer, but hey, it's a really good time on top of that, so this is a win-win.
And that does it. Thanks so much to everyone for watching, and special thanks to Eric for doing this with me. And hey, don't worry, Roger the Retro Gaming Puppet will be back in the next installment of 5 Reasons. We hope to see you then.
Flying jump kick. Look at that.
You've done it!
We did it!